home computer owners and children, but mostly I listened to how they talked and watched how they behaved among their new thinking machines. I heard computers provoke erudite conversations. Perhaps people wondered, the human mind is just a programmed machine, much like a computer. Perhaps if the mind is a program, free will is an illusion. Most strikingly, these conversations occurred not just in seminar rooms. They were taking place around kitchen tables and in playrooms. Computers brought philosophy into everyday life. In particular, they turned children into philosophers. In the presence of their simple electronic games that played tic-tac-toe or challenged them in spelling, children asked if computers were alive, if they had different ways of thinking from people, and what, in the age of smart machines, was special about being a person. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, I witnessed a moment when we were confronted with machines that invited us to think differently about human thought, memory, and understanding. The computer was an evocative object that provoked self-reflection. For me, this was captured in a conversation I had with 13-year-old Deborah in the early 1980s. After a year of studying programming, Deborah said that, when working with the computer, there's a little piece of your mind, and now it's a little piece of the computer's mind. Once this was achieved, you could see yourself differently, face to face with a computer. People reflected on who they were in the mirror of the machine. In 1984, thinking about Deborah, and in homage as well to Simone de Beauvoir, I called my first book on computers and people The Second Self. That date, 1984, is of course iconic in Western intellectual thinking, tethered as it is to George Orwell's novel. 1984 describes a society that subjects people to constant government surveillance, public mind control, and loss of individual rights. I find it ironic that my own 1984 book, about the technology that in many a science fiction novel makes possible such a dystopian world, was by contrast full of hope and optimism. I had concerns about the holding power of the new technology. Some people found computers so compelling that they did not want to be separated from them. And I worried whether losing oneself in worlds within the machine would distract us from facing our problems in the real, both personal and political. But in this first work, I focused on how evocative computers fostered new reflection about the self. In the decade following the publication of The Second Self, people's relationships with computers changed. Whereas in the 1980s that relationship was almost always one-on-one, a person alone with a machine, in the 1990s this was no longer the case. By then the computer had become a portal that enabled people to lead parallel lives in virtual worlds. People joined networks such as America Online and discovered a new sense of place. These were heady times. We were no longer limited to handfuls of close friends and contacts. Now we could have hundreds, even thousands, a dazzling breadth of connection. My focus shifted from the one-on-one with the computer to the relationships people formed with each other using the computer as an intermediary. I began throwing weekly pizza parties in the Boston area to meet people who could tell me the stories of their lives in the new virtual worlds. They described the erosion of boundaries between the real and virtual as they moved in and out of their lives on the screen. Views of self became less unitary, more protean. I again felt witness, through the prism of technology, to a shift in how we create and experience our own identities. I reported on this work in my 1995 Life on the Screen, which offered, on balance, a positive view of new opportunities for exploring identity online. But by then, my optimism of 1984 had been challenged. I was meeting people, many people, who found online life more satisfying than what some derisively called RL, that is, real life. Doug, a Midwestern college student, played 4 avatars, distributed across 3 different online worlds. He always had these worlds open as windows on his computer screen, along with his schoolwork, email program, and favorite games. He cycled